Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Land Your Next Client, Become a Preferred Consultant for Top Enterprises with Deepak Lalwani. We're really excited to have you here today. I'm going to take you through a couple housekeeping slides as we wait for everybody to join us. Next slide, please. Hello, that's me. My name is Sarah Condi. I'll be moderating our webinar today. Super quick background on me. I've been at MBO for about 8 years, and I serve as a director of our Consultant Services Department. And I work with a team of advisors that respond to requests from independent consultants who are curious about MBO service offerings. And we do consultation appointments where we learn more about their backgrounds and needs and run estimates to help determine if our services are the right fit. Next slide, please. Thanks. So what is MBO? Put really quickly, MBO's mission statement is to make it easy for independent consultants and their clients to work together. What does that really mean? As a quick high-level overview, we offer a complete all-inclusive business operating system for independent consultants. Basically, that means we take care of the administrative items that are typically outsourced to several vendors, like incorporation, corporate compliance, contract review, liability, insurance coverage, invoicing, expenses, tax withholding, access to tax benefits, things like that. So that's a high-level overview of why MBO is here and what we do. So now we've got just some quick housekeeping on the webinar setup. You can see the controls listed here. We will be taking questions throughout that will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Any questions that we don't get to will be addressed and answered via email after the presentation. And this is really important. We get a lot of questions about this. An entire copy of the presentation, a recorded copy of the actual presentation, and then the actual slide deck of the entire webinar will be sent via email to all registrants within about a week. So a lot of people ask us, can I get a copy of this? Can I get a copy of the slides? Yes, we're going to send it to you and you're going to get it. And we do encourage you to ask questions because we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And so now for kind of the social part, we are going to be live tweeting under hashtag MBOWeb. So to submit your questions and comments, our handle is at MBO Partners as well. So, you know, we're going to have polls throughout as well. We're going to have some interactive times where you can interact with Deepak and give him some feedback. And like I said, send us your questions too, because we'll be answering them at the end. Okay. It is now my sincere pleasure to introduce you finally to today's presenter, Deepak Lalwani. And Deepak has been working as a change management and business transformation professional for over 15 years. His wealth of experience includes working as a management consultant at Accenture as part of their talent and organization performance practice. He also worked at Carlyle and Gallagher Consulting Group, which is a mid-sized management technology consultancy and was actually voted top 10 places to work in 2014 by Consulting Magazine. His works included creating people and organization change practice during his time there. Prior to that, he worked as an international consultant and manager at 2 Fortune 500 companies, including National Grid and Anthem, which is now Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. And just quick, some of his clients, you know, you'll recognize the names, right? Novartis, Pfizer, MasterCard, JP Morgan, American Express, and many others. He's also the founder and host of a business and technology of Greater New York event called BTGNY. And he's graduated with a master's degree specializing in organizational change from Columbia University. And he's also taught a management course at NYU. So, and I shortened it, guys. So suffice it to say, he has a wealth of experience and knowledge to share with us today. And I know I'm personally really interested to soak up all of his great advice so I can pass that along to the independent consultants that I speak to every day. So with that, Deepak, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Sarah, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here and to talk to some of the other independent consultants. I know there's a lot of them out there, so I'm very excited to connect with them and offer whatever I can to help make them a success as well. I'm going to flip to the next slide. So in terms of the outline or table of contents for this presentation, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background in terms of what's happening with the independent workforce, key trends that are driving the need for independence, what companies or employers look for in independence, um, the fact that independents want control and choosing their clients, and just differentiate between contract versus consulting from my perspective. And then I want to get into the importance of marketing and business development. That's a key theme in this presentation, and so it's just something really important to do as an independent consultant. We'll talk about establishing your credibility, the ideas around marketing gravity. A well-known independent consultant has come up with that, and that's something people can incorporate in their practice. Marketing your services, and then of course what's worked for me and things to watch out for from my experience. So we start with a study by a Deloitte consultant that shows that more than half of HR respondents stated that their need for contingent workers will go up in the next 3 to 5 years. So this is a growing trend, and we're going to get into the specifics in the next slide. So solopreneurs are major contributors to the economy and are definitely significant drivers of growth. Independence generated 1.1 trillion in total U.S. revenue in 2015, and the headcount continues to grow. So we had 32 million in 2011, 40 million forecasted this year, and then 49 million in 2021. So those are some big numbers. Some great material in current affairs or in the marketplace. Contractor positions are being held by educated and highly skilled professionals like those on the phone. Great article. You can get your hands on it. It's by the Harvard Business Review called Rise of the Super Temp. So you can see that on the right side there. So key trends driving the need for independence, I break it down into two components. So we have companies or employers. I mean, there are key economic shifts. The Great Recession between '07 and '09 is a great example. And then with that, we continue to see a lot of corporate restructuring and downsizing. So whether that's a merger and acquisition, integration, cost reduction opportunities, such as restructuring or outsourcing, is something we continue to see even though the recession is behind us. So this is a trend that is continuing to happen. It's starting from the tech bubble burst in 2001 all the way up until here and beyond. And with that, we're also seeing a shift with workers. We know that the millennial generation is the largest generation to date, and there's a need there around work-life balance. There's a decrease in job security. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the restructuring and downsizing. The Affordable Care Act by Barack Obama and his administration gives over 30 million Americans the opportunity to get health care outside of an employer. So, and then with that, the proliferation of project management or contractor consulting talent management platforms. And these are all links. The presentation will be available after this webinar. So we have project management talent, project execution network, A Connect. There's some of the other ones such as Business Talent Group. IQ workforce. So quite a bit of them have grown and proliferated in today's marketplace. As we're in this new economic environment, you may be asking, what are companies looking for from independents? One thing that comes up over and over is that being incredibly flexible. Today, there's so many shifts in today's companies that it's important to be incredibly flexible, and company leaders are turning to independence for increased business flexibility and agility, and it allows them to quickly scale and staff up or down as needed. So it helps them meet shifts in demand and changing business circumstances in today's ever-increasing volatile economy. So companies do need to broaden their definition of what it means to be a great place to work. Now, what we find with independents in some of this research is that independents want more control in choosing their clients. They want independence and control over their work. It allows for greater work-life flexibility. We saw that with the millennials in the prior slide. It offers up more autonomy and control over their careers, knowing that employers continue to restructure, whether it's outsourcing or economic downturn or cost reduction opportunity. This is leading to independents having more control over their careers and having more autonomy and work-life balance. So over 80% of these professionals say they can choose what to work on and who to work with. So independents are in demand, and they realize that they're able to make the same or even more money being independent. And that's definitely something I've seen networking with other independents. I wanted to just denote the difference between contracting versus consulting. That's a question that I've been asked in the past. What are some of the key differences? Contracting, or what I also known as subcontracting, typically means working through another business to get staff to a client or a project. The key takeaway is you're on somebody else's paper and your margins may be less. In this context, consulting means typically going direct to client rather than working through a middleman. The key takeaway here is you're on your own paper with the client and your margins should be more. I call out this distinction because you may find yourself in either camp or even both in your independent consulting journey. What I've found over the past 2 years that works best is don't let ego or pride get in the way of your decision. There's nothing wrong with contracting or subcontracting, especially since it's a challenge to get through the procurement process with large organizations as an independent. So the key takeaway here is I would strongly consider pursuing or doing both. Pursuing both channels, especially since you never know which channel is going to take longer to materialize. There have been many times where I've interviewed for contracting or consulting opportunities and they don't materialize. So it's important to get as many of those opportunities in your pipeline and not let ego or pride get in the way of making these important decisions about your next assignment. So I just wanted to point that out. Now we'll get into the meat of the presentation. We're going to get into the importance of marketing and business development. I start with a quote from some of the books I've read. Some consultants disdain marketing, their services. Others relish in it. Needless to say, if you don't do marketing, you'll soon become an ex-consultant. This is something that's stuck with me over the years, and I really wanted to share it with the audience today. All right, so we start with how do we do that? How do we go about marketing or doing business development? And I break it into multiple components here. I think one of the key things you want to do is establish your credibility. And now with with things going more and more digital, it's easier and easier to do that. One of the things that I find helpful both in the research and both in my practice is collect testimonials. That's an opportunity to establish your reputation. It's a great way to establish your credibility in the eyes of your prospects. You can use all types of people in your professional network, be it an old supervisor or boss, be it your coworkers, colleagues, a direct report, your peers. It's important to get those. And you get to distinguish yourself from other independents and other professionals. What you want to do is you want to keep them short and to the point. And today, as you may know, it's very easy to have them added to LinkedIn. And if you're not using LinkedIn today, then that's something you definitely want to do. Obviously, it was acquired by Microsoft, as you know, and it's continuing to proliferate. So adding testimonials on LinkedIn is easier than ever. Obtaining referrals or word of mouth referrals to a qualified prospect from a satisfied client is a powerful way for establishing credibility. It's important to ask satisfied clients, previous employers, prospective colleagues, if they'd be willing to tell others about the value you provide. And we get into the ideas of obtaining referrals and word of mouth. There's a section here that we talk about networking, so we're going to get into that. And then show your body of work. And you can do that by having a digital presence. So I have a link to my LinkedIn profile. You can add posts or updates. I try and do that. I have a publication up there. I've added my guest speaking honors and awards or other honors and awards. I have a summary, a robust summary that I provide. And then, you certainly should consider having a website. You'll see the link to my website there. I have an approach around my work, the services that I provide, a case study around the services and the clients that I've served, and that Sarah talked about earlier. So the key is to establish credibility and to leverage the credibility of others. And testimonials and referrals are an effective method for transferring the trust others have in you to your prospect. Go to the next slide. So establish your credibility. I wanted to talk about this idea of marketing gravity that I've come up with from a very well-known independent consultant named Alan Weiss, and how it's been working for me, and something I've held on to over the past few years. So marketing gravity shows how to stimulate people contacting you at any stage of your career, from being a newbie or a veteran. So instead of cold calling people, you're using these marketing levers to draw people to you. So some of them that I have used, and of course, I'm certainly not doing all of them, but the author of this certainly advocates to do as many as possible and to certainly go with the ones that resonate with you. So pro bono work, that's some stuff that I've done some pro bono work this year with my church. I've had a position paper on a digital consulting platform. I try to do some speaking with the Project Management Institute. You'll see that on LinkedIn and here with MBO today, which I'm so grateful for. Referrals, obviously. Teaching, if you have an opportunity to do that, that's something I've done. The website is something I have. Networking is very, very important. And I also have an electronic newsletter. So as much as I can, and I know this may not be chargeable or what I like to call non-billable work, but it's really, really important to consider this. It's a great framework and concept to draw people to your brand and value. Like I said, you may be more interested in some than others. So some more than others may resonate. And the key thing here is it changes the dynamic. People approach you rather than you approaching them, like cold calling. So I thought I'd put that out there. There's a link to the video for more about this from the author, Alan Weiss. All right, so marketing your services through writing. I'm going to keep this brief. So writing white papers. I have one on LinkedIn. It's an authoritative report that addresses a specific issue or problem. It may not yield immediate new clients, but the great thing with having it up is that that's something you can track with the number of shares and views. And even though I wrote a paper last year about change and transformation, I still see people sharing it and viewing it. And so that's definitely favorable. Publishing an article, um, prospects may assume that if someone thought well enough of your article to publish it, you must know what you're talking about, so that's great. Um, Consultants may be reluctant to write them, but trade publications are actually hungry for the content. So it's important to target publications that are credible and read by your target market. Publishing a book, I'm certainly not there yet, but the research shows that it's one of the ultimate marketing pieces. So advantages of using this an established publisher include credibility you'll receive in the marketplace, a distribution system, and their help marketing the book to bookstores and the media. Publish a newsletter. I certainly do that about business and technology of Greater New York. That's the networking event I host in Manhattan, New York. You can click there for the newsletter afterwards. It's a great way to keep in periodic contact with your network. You focus on what you want to do is you want to focus on providing value and provide useful content to your readers. Other key takeaways: publish it regularly, and that'll also help fuel your network. And that's something you can also track in terms of the number of opens or the number of clicks to the newsletter. Some other services through writing. Write a blog. You may want to do that. Proposal writing, if it's a big engagement. Advertising, key takeaway there, advertise in the right publication. Do it consistently, address benefits, and track their effectiveness. Writing press releases is another opportunity to maintain your visibility with a wide audience. The objective there is to get mentioned as an industry expert in a publication read by your prospects, and then maintain your website. I think that one's very important because people can access it 24/7 while you're away, traveling or serving their clients. I think there's value for independents to maintain a website today. And for me, it serves as a digital brochure. It defines who you are, what you do, and establish your credibility in the marketplace. Now, guys, I want to flip to a poll. I'm going to skip back a couple of slides, hand it over to Sarah around establishing your credibility. Sarah, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, we're going to launch that. You guys are going to see it on the screen really quick. And it says, how are you establishing your credibility as an independent? And we have A, by collecting testimonials, B, by obtaining referrals, C, by having a digital presence, or D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. So I'm watching everything come in, and looks like we have a pretty savvy audience because a lot of them are saying that they're doing these things.
Great.
The second is referrals. The word of mouth one looks like it's really kind of between that and all of them, but that's certainly the referrals are the clear winner in the individual category.
Yeah, that's great, and that's what I find works the best, word of mouth, and a lot of that can transpire through networking, and I'll get into that. We're going to do one more poll around marketing your services through writing. Sarah, go ahead and take that away.
Okay, so we're going to put that up here, and it says, how are you marketing your services through writing? A, by publishing a newsletter. B, by writing a white paper, article, or book. C, by blogging. D, by advertising or writing press releases. Or E, all of the above. Okay, so right now, the clear winner is looking like blogging. And
wow.
Maybe second, I know, I was surprised by that too. Hold on, it's evening out. Nope, blogging. It's kind of fun. It's like watching all the numbers come in real time. Looks like blogging's the winner, and
wow.
a close tie for second is white papers or by advertising or writing press releases. But blogging's number one.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, my number one is newsletter, so that's interesting. I haven't really got into blogging too much, but what they do say is trial and error. I mean, if blogging is working for you, then we can definitely talk about that at the end of the presentation. I'd love to hear more about that. I'm going to skip to so we talked about writing. We're going to get into talking about speaking. Another quote, this one is from Alan Weiss. If you don't That's kind of stuck with me. If you don't blow your own horn, there's not going to be any music. So with that said, let me get into the next topic of marketing and business development. So marketing, you're consulting through speaking. So guest speaking, whether in person or through a webinar such as the one we're doing today, often it's worthwhile to deliver a speech that's unpaid to the right audience. For most consultant fees from new businesses will be more lucrative than speaking fees. I mean, ideally, you want to look at people who can hire you, at least recommend you to others, or what I call influencers. It's good to be strategic about where you speak, improve your speaking skills and practices. Obviously, your objective is to ultimately convert members of the audience into clients. And then there's radio or TV interviews. Allows you to maintain your visibility with prospective prospects, and those can refer you to others. Consultants gain interview opportunities by directly contacting the interviewers, production staff, submitting press releases to the program, working through a contact such as an agent, publicist, or marketing professional. And then other ways, business interview panel. I actually done something like that in New Jersey at an information technology or IT expo just a couple of weeks ago, teach a course. I think that's another way to market yourself through speaking. Let's turn it over to a poll here around speaking, Sarah.
Okay, we're going to put that up, and it says, how are you marketing your services through speaking? A, by guest speaking in person or on a webinar. B, by conducting a radio or TV interviews. C, by being on business or interview panels. Or D, by teaching a course, or E, all of the above. And it looks like right now, looks like it's a tie between, so guest speaking, the winner. A real close second, so that's A. Real close second, though, is by being on business or interview panels. Actually, they're tied right now. So, yeah, so it looks like people like to speak or be on interview panels for business.
Yeah, and there are a lot of venues that are hungry for guest speakers. And again, if you it's great to do it for unpaid if it's to the right audience. Marketing your services through networking, and this goes back to one of the polling data that we received in regards to establishing your credibility and obtaining referrals through word of mouth. Here are 7 ways to touch members of your network. So newsletter, your entire network should receive your newsletter for those that are doing it. It shouldn't be an advertisement, but rather, like I said earlier, provide content that's useful and provides value. Email, share information such as articles that you find interesting or links to websites that may be useful to them. Telephone, of course, check-in and touch base calls or setting up meetings over the phone for 30 minutes. You can also share some information or follow up about work you've done for them already. And again, you want to provide value there. You can also ask them for advice. I always find that to be helpful. Work the crowd at a professional meeting. Make sure you connect with key contacts and spend time meeting with them. Oral meetings, using the acronym network, connect in person over coffee, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Relax. Invite your key contacts to a fun event such as a happy hour or ball game. Or kindness. Show them acts of kindness by sending a birthday or holiday card. I've certainly done that around Christmas time. Okay. And so how to use networking to get more work, or what's worked for me? So maintain contact with your network. Some of the best source of leads for new business are former clients who are pleased with your work. That goes back to word of mouth or obtaining referrals. How will you keep in touch with them? You have that framework in the prior slide. I host a networking event soon. Marketing and business development, again, could be a non-billable or non-chargeable event. I try to meet people once every 2 months at the networking event I host in New York, so there's a link to that. And then outside of that, just attending professional meetings. So identify professional meetings attended by your prospect, other consultants, or those in your discipline. Look for opportunities to help others by providing useful information or making introductions. I find that that's helpful. And so you become a go-to contact for folks that consider becoming part of a professional association or create one like I did. Most professional associations need help from volunteers. And then lastly, develop relationships with service providers. I certainly do that. That comes back to the contracting or subcontracting idea. Have relationships with key service providers can lead to referrals. And then find out which ones conduct business in your target market. With that said, networking is one of the most effective approaches to market your consulting services. And that's what I found over and over, not only in practice, but in some of the research I've done around this. So that's incredibly important, and it's certainly linked to obtaining referrals or receiving word of mouth referrals. Let's turn it over to a poll around networking. Let me turn it over to you for the next one, Sarah.
Okay, we've got that coming up here. The question is, how are you marketing your services through networking? And A is by reaching out and maintaining contact with your network. B, by attending professional meetings. C, by developing relationships with service providers. D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. Looks like we've got a lot of people who say that they're doing all of them, so good for everybody.
That's great.
And yeah, that is great. And then we've got, I would say, coming up next from the individual aspect is A, by reaching out and maintaining contact with your network.
That's great. Yeah, very important to do that. And it's even easier now with LinkedIn as you build your network. I often meet people at various networking events, whether it's the one I host or the ones that I attend, and I always try to aggregate my contacts on LinkedIn. One more poll. Well, we'll get into the overall poll, but now that we talked about what's worked for me and doing a deeper dive around networking, I want to just end with an important slide on things to watch out for or the mistakes I've made so you don't repeat them. You want to be very flexible. We talked about that in an earlier slide in regards to businesses or employers or companies are looking for independents that are incredibly flexible and have no concerns around rolling up their sleeves to help get a job done. Be open to contracting or consulting. That earlier. Don't let ego or pride get in the way because it's hard to know which opportunity will materialize. Consider developing a niche. That's something I'm continuing to work on since I've been a cross-industry professional. Scan your environment. Be ready to change. I think with the advent of being in the technological revolution that we are in now, especially with driverless cars in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, be ready to change. Invest in yourself and your business. Understand which business development opportunities work best for you. We're getting a sense of that with some of the polling. Know and understand your travel preferences. That's something I've had to learn working at big and mid-sized consultancies and understanding where I am in my career and how much travel I can do at this point. Don't take an opportunity just for the money. That's a lesson I continue to learn. And if an opportunity doesn't feel right, just say no to a prospect. So doing some introspection about an opportunity, I think is important. Let me turn it over to another poll. Number 5, please, Sarah.
So this is polls coming up. It says, overall, what's the best marketing and business development approach for you? Which, makes sense. It's going to change based on your personality and what you feel comfortable with. So we have A, establishing credibility through a digital presence, referrals. B, marketing your services through writing. C, marketing your services through speaking. D, marketing your services through networking, or E, all of the above. So looks like if we have to pick an individual, yeah, okay. Looks to me like the clear winner here is D, networking. We've got some
Good.
here. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
clear winner. I would say second is establishing credibility through digital presence.
that's great. It seems like we have a lot of experts in the audience today, so it's good to hear that they're taking all the right steps to get engaged on their clients. Sorry, did you? Yeah, and that would conclude the presentation. Happy to take Q&A. Thank you so much for participating. It's a real privilege and honor to be speaking to you all today.
Yes, and thank you, Deepak. That was wonderful. A lot of really good practical advice. I know that I personally was scribbling stuff down, so I'm excited to get a copy of the deck. And just to remind everybody, we're going to be emailing that out within a week to everybody who's registered. So you'll have a copy of the presentation and a copy of the deck. With that, we did get lots of questions, so I want to dive in and have some interactive time with Deepak. And just too, if something comes to mind and you have a question now, feel free to ask it as well. I'm going to ask you a question just because I do some radio stuff on the side, so this one's particularly interesting to me. We had a person named Les say that he's been toying with podcasting solutions. And what do you think about that as a marketing tool?
Podcasts. I mean, if you find that it is targeting your market, your target audience, and you feel like it's resonating with them, and you're doing some sort of polling, or you have an understanding that people are the referral source is podcasting, and it's not word of mouth or networking or just speaking or writing, and you're finding through your own trial and error that that's working for you, that's something I would strongly consider. If you feel like you're engaging your audience and you feel like you are receiving client referrals, that's something I would continue to do.
We have lots more. I'm going to ask one that just came in because it's a little selfishly, because I get this question all the time, and we coach people on it a lot here when they call in. We ask us, I sometimes struggle with how to convey a client relationship if I subcontract through a third party versus going direct. How do you recommend approaching this?
Yeah, one more time on the question. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Sure. It says, I sometimes struggle with how to convey a client relationship if I subcontract through a third party versus going direct as a consultant. How do you recommend approaching this? So like when you're kind of, there's a middleman involved and you want to talk about your experience with customer and client.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and it certainly comes with experience. I think in my case, when I'm deployed to a client through a middleman, I certainly, play up that client on my resume, on my LinkedIn profile, and on my website. So those three marketing pieces is something where I try to market the fact that I've served these clients, and I also try to ask the client, assuming that I'm doing work for them, and I build a closer relationship through the consulting engagement, if they're open to putting up a testimonial on LinkedIn, then that's something I really appreciate. Again, that's based on the value I'm providing to the client and the relationship. You're really the consultant that's providing the day-to-day value to the client. And as long as you use your discretion, I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that you're doing some great work for hypothetically a Fortune 500 company, for example, and putting some marketing levers out there, whether through your resume on LinkedIn or even on your website, to show that that you worked with this particular client, and because that'll ultimately get you engaged on your next client. As you know, with the quote from Alan Weiss, if you don't toot your own horn, there's not going to be any music. Um, and there's definitely a fine balance between kind of being conceited or arrogant about working for a client, a big name client, and just using it for marketing or business development purposes to help you ensure that you stay billable and or engaged onto a new client. So I would use discretion, but there's
Yeah, because you always have to be careful. You're not breaking a
right,
non-compete or something like that too.
right. But there certainly will be no music if you toot the middleman as your client, because
That's
they
right.
may be an unknown name, right? And also, yeah, I don't know how much client confidentiality or non-disclosure may be breached if you're just using a client logo or a client name. You don't have to get into specifics. I've seen people on LinkedIn have clients put up a testimonial, and they would just use the first name of the client or even use a job title. So there is certainly an amount of discretion that you can use.
That's good. That's a good tip. It's not an all or nothing, type
Right.
of false choice. I know sometimes when I talk to people, they feel that way because as of course if you can avoid the middleman, always great, but sometimes they're necessary to get the project and
Yeah.
that it works.
Yeah.
So we deal with that. We definitely coach people with that a lot. Um, so we've got some like real practical questions too that are a little bit more granular, but I want to go into them. Um, so have you ever had, we have Sandy, she kind of has two questions for us, and she's had, have you ever had to break through some perceptions that consultants are not as engaged or dedicated to the success of the client as much as a direct employee would be? And she references Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 book, where consultants are essentially bashed. That's interesting to me because I haven't heard that. I was wondering if you have heard that, or kind of, in your experience, have you gotten that vibe? At least from, I could imagine you getting it maybe from the employees at the very least. So that's her.
Yeah. I mean, there is this veil that I feel like you have to. I mean, there's just so many consultants out there today. Whether they have experience or training. One of the books I read is that there's just such a low barrier to entry on using the word consultant, whether you're a managing consultant or a marketing consultant or any type of nomenclature you use with the word consultant. So, yeah, you know, many clients and employers, they may have a negative or not so great experience with a consultant. But the important thing is to keep things professional with your client and ultimately build a relationship with them where you can, pierce that veil. I'm currently working with a company and a managing director that I'm looking to build a relationship with him. I spend so much time with him that I feel like, we're getting to a point where we build a relationship based on trust. So he knows me as a person as opposed to, um, being a consultant. And that's important to me because I know how consultants can get, because there are just so many consultants and consultancies out there in the marketplace today that some of them may rub you the wrong way. So it's important to build a relationship based on trust with your client, assuming you can get there, so you can help kind of pierce that veil, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense because like you said, this is a rising trend. All of our research shows that as well, and it's something where when you get a lot of people doing it, sometimes you can get a not undeserved, negative reputation in that space when it's flooded. So um, like you said, kind of differentiating and trying to get them to connect with you makes a lot of sense. And Sandy had one more question. It's really practical, and I have a few other practical ones that I want to get to. Still have a few minutes, if that's all right with you, Deepak. We're getting lots of questions, so I hope you okay for a few more.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Sandy also wants to know, do you think it's okay to add all of my network contacts to an email list, or should they opt themselves in?
All my networking contacts to what was that?
So she has a list of networking contacts, right? Can she add them to the newsletter, or do they need to opt in themselves?
I think I think there's no harm to adding them to the newsletter, but I think it's important that you give them an opt-out opportunity in your newsletter. I certainly have that in my newsletter, um, and I clearly state that they're part of my network, and if they don't find this information relevant or valuable, that they're more than welcome to unsubscribe.
Right.
I think it's important to take that step, but give them the opportunity to unsubscribe if they don't want to be part of your newsletter. And I get it. It's important. Everyone's inundated with emails, and I think as long as you're providing something of value to them, um, they'll be more than happy to stay subscribed. But give them the opportunity to unsubscribe or opt out when they receive it on the bottom of your newsletter. But as a starting point, I don't think there's any harm with adding your network to your newsletter, and giving them the option to unsubscribe as needed.
Sounds good. I tend to agree, as long as you're making sure that you're respecting them and giving them a way out if they want it.
Right.
I think it's okay to be a little bit forward with that. Lori asked us another practical question here. She wants to know your recommendation regarding good old-fashioned business cards. What do you feel about those?
Yeah, to definitely have them. I know some people we're going into the digital age, and some people get really concerned about, killing more trees, but I err on the side of having business cards and handing them out. I've been in one. I'll give you one quick example. I was in one situation where someone attended my networking event, and they took my business card and they actually gave my business card to someone else, knowing that they wanted that's someone that wanted to network with me or get in touch with me about how I can, help their firm. So, um, um, and so I think it's important to give them out. I think it's important to give them out in abundance. That's what they're there for. And I see no reason why you should be scarce about providing them.
Okay. So they're here to stay.
Yeah.
Ron asked a question that, in his experience, he's found that potential clients increasingly want more detailed white papers and sketching out what we can do to contribute. These aren't clients yet. They're people who he's trying to win. They're his prospects, So he wants to say, how do we balance detail, and providing detail versus losing control of our intellectual property or ideas?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think if a client is reaching out to you about, having more white papers, that's good. I mean, that's a positive sign. Like you have a networking or business development channel in writing that is actually working for you and resonating with the client. So if you're okay with continuing to use that channel and you're comfortable with it and it works for you, it sounds like it certainly works for your client, then that's something I would continue to do. As far as sharing information, I think I'd be more open to it than not. After all, clients, they, they are, they're the ones that make a decision as to whether they want to bring you on. So I think being more transparent and open about your information without providing too much detail is totally fine. There are ways to protect information as well. So, for example, when I send out collateral or information, including white papers, I would have it in PDF, and I would ensure my logo or the name of my company would be on it. But I mean, because ultimately you want to build a relationship with the client, and once you do that, you want to build a relationship based on trust, and that's an important hierarchy. And if you have an avenue here, such as writing a white paper and providing it to the client, then you're one step closer to getting hired for that project.
We have, we'll do two more questions. Thank you for being, for all your responses, Deepak. Glenn asked us, or asked you, how would you balance assignments where the potential income is greater with a success fee structure versus hourly billing? So, how would you structure your rates, and, if you have a chance to make a percentage, based on their success factor or charging hourly, what are your thoughts on that, especially if you know more with the fee structure?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think it's called value-based pricing or value-based fees. If you feel like that is something that may work for your clients, or you think that's something you can position favorably, then, where you can charge a percentage of the revenue you make, or a percentage of the cost reduction that you can provide, then I think you should certainly do that. If you can position yourself as such. I've worked in other situations where people want to do a weekly rate, a daily rate, or even an hourly rate. And even within a daily rate, they may want to have a W-2 relationship, or a corp to corp, also known as a 1099 if you're not incorporated. So I think it really depends on a case-by-case basis. I understand the IRS is more vigilant and is scrutinizing the number of 1099s versus W-2s, and so that I think affects how your client may want to protect themselves and how they want to go to market about hiring contractors or consultants. So if you can position yourself, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes if they can pay you a deliverable or a percentage, it looks better for them than doing an hourly rate in terms of differential from an employee.
Yeah, I've heard people do deliverable-based pricing, if you know all of that in advance. Value-based pricing is something I just touched on, or, the classic time and materials, where it's by the week, by the day, by the hour.
All right, one last question that we have today, and it's from Sarah, and she admits, she said, hey, this is a basic question, but I'm a consulting newbie, and I think she says, I feel paralyzed on how to market myself because I'm not sure what to market. What are some resources that I can hone in on what it is I'm even offering to people or selling? What questions should I be asking myself or my client and previous employers to identify what I'm selling? So what I hear in that question is kind of like, there's all these places and to the point, but like, where do you start? Maybe we can ask you, Deepak, how did you start? And kind of see if that can help there. If you have any practical advice for her, or anything in your experience about kind of what to do when you're like, okay, I know I should be doing everything, but where do I start with step one?
Yeah, I mean, and so what I'm hearing is how to position your services, or what are the service offerings you're ultimately providing your client. And I think the most important thing here is it has to come from your experience. And so the work I'm doing today is very much no different than the work I've done for one of the big four consultancies that I work for, the mid-sized consultancies that I've worked in. So I firmly believe if you're going to go out there and being independent consultant, where you'd have to start somewhere. before you become an independent consultant. And that 9 times out of 10 has to be your past experience. So, the answer is, yeah, taking a look at your resume, taking a look at your LinkedIn profile, and, understand what service offerings you can provide and what value you can provide given your background and work experience and skill set.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to put up one last poll, and it's just going to ask you, we're going to put it up on the screen. If we didn't get to your question, we'll get to it via email. And thank you everybody for your interactive questions and being so engaged. It makes it a lot of fun. So we're just going to ask you if you'd like more information from MBO or from Deepak or maybe both of us. We just wanted to know that. So we're going to put that up there and give you a chance. And if you do, we'll reach out and get you some content and get you on our list. And if not, that's fine too. Again, just as a reminder, as we have this poll up, we will have copies of the presentations and the slides that'll go out within about 1 week. And Deepak, I just want to thank you so much. This was really informative. There was a lot of practical content in here. Like I said, I'm personally looking forward to the slides myself. And we just want to thank you so much for your time and lending a little bit of your expertise today.
Great. Sarah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, have a great day and happy Friday Eve. Take care.